Live from the Talking Joe studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe weekly podcast. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe thought we would last. Talking Joe is there. Find each other like a married couple. Our podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there.
Talking Joe is the code name for a completely untrained special podcast force. Its purpose, to produce a regular comic review show while breaking and replacing a series of presenters from across the world.
Talking Joe. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. We are on our soapbox. Nobody seems to care. Fighting for fandom wherever there's trouble. The podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to episode 117 of Talking Joe, the best and longest running dedicated G.I. Joe comics podcast in the universe. This is episode 5 of our looks at the G.I. Joe Disavowed era, the Devil's Due run. Today we are talking about G.I. Joe's issue 10 to 13, the Malfunction arc. If you're new to the show, you can find all of the details and previous episodes over on the website, which is talkingjoe.co.uk. And now, without further ado, let me introduce my co-hosts. First up, it's the real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Talking Joe listeners.
The thousands of you brought over by the pure force of Tim's magnetism. And next up, we have G.I. Jay Cordray. What's up, Jay?
Howdy, Joe fans. Ready to get started and talk about some G.I. Joe comics.
Yeehaw. Cool. So what's been going on? I thought last week we were talking about Mike Zeck's cool covers. We never actually spoke about his Reckonings trade paperback cover. So this is back in the day when they were going all out and they were actually doing additional art just for the trade paperback, which isn't something that necessarily happens that frequently anymore. So a nice image there of Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow with Hawk in a kind of crosshairs in the background. And I've actually shared the process for that cover over on the Instagram and Twitter pages. So Zeck created 3 prelims and before moving on to the final inked piece. So yeah, if you're interested in seeing process, go head over to the Talking Joe Instagram page and have a look. Did you guys notice that one?
I forgot that it existed until you brought it up recently, and I like it. It's not my favorite Zeck image. So, for example, there's this sketch where Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow are each slightly rotated out, and they're looking at each other. And that one has a little more, oomph to it. But he said, any Zeck drawing for G.I. Joe is welcome. What I don't love about this is Storm Shadow stuff that isn't related to Zeck. Storm Shadow's costume design is overdone. The color is a little overdone, but at least with no background, there's sort of fewer elements that are competing. I do feel like Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow in this, their proportions are, they're maybe like 5% too short, like 5% too wide and stocky. If I could open up this image in Photoshop and use the free transform tool, I'd make them a tiny bit taller, a tiny bit slimmer, but it's pretty ballsy of me to critique Mike Zeck's anatomy. So I'll just say good cover.
I didn't really get that good of a look at it. I don't know. I guess I would say I'm a little underwhelmed. I mean, it's just those two standing there. Yeah, I feel like I would want a little more action.
I actually pinged Zek a message during the week as well to ask if the Storm Shadow design was from him for those covers, and he said that actually it was a Devil's Due design that was handed to him. So
I'm shocked to hear that. I'm being facetious.
Yeah, so not from the design board of Zek. That one. Never mind. What else is happening in our world? We had the sketchbook specials, which have been going on, and we dropped the last one, whenever it was, this time last week, on YouTube. Yeah, everyone seems to be enjoying those, so something that we'll keep on with. And since doing them as well, some people have been contacting us with interest in sort of sharing their own sketchbook and G.I. Joe art. So yeah, it's fun to see the enthusiasm there. Tim, did you drop something this week on A Real American Book?
I did. A Ron Rudat pencil drawing of Psych Out from 1985. This is the final design. It's not a turnaround. It's not the front side rear view. It's not color. It's not a marker drawing or a painting. It's Rudat's final sort of pencil drawing. It's just Psych Out standing with his feet apart, front view with lots of little detail call outs. And the paper is a little stained yellow, which I like because I think it was pressed up against some other piece of paper that had marker on it for 10 years. And so the ink jumped, or the paper's slightly acidifying. I don't know if you can see that in the scan, but
yeah, I can tell. Yeah, so you can make out a sort of a shape that it's making. I can't tell what that shape would be, but yeah, that makes sense.
And it's just all a nice reminder that Ron Rudat can really draw. And I know this is embedded in, like Ron Rudat was the only G.I. Joe figure designer for the first 7 years. I think sometimes I just forget because he's just so synonymous with G.I. Joe. And I think of the finished products as sort of characters that I know. But to see a drawing of his that I haven't seen before, I'm reminded, I don't know that I would have come up with, I would not have been able to come up with all those details, or, drawing clothing folds is difficult, and Rudat can do it.
Yeah, and he's got the detachable speakers, he describes them, going on his arm like those miniature satellite dishes. I even forget that those are a thing, because the moment I got that toy, I was like, yep, not going to be using this.
Right there with you.
I think I remember using them in my first or second game with the figure, but in photographing my childhood toy to go along with this blog post this week, in pulling the figure out of this little plastic container where each figure has all their accessories, I was surprised to find that at some point since 1987, I had lost those two extra clips. It's fine. If I'd much rather have his pistol or his weird lunchbox.
Yeah. I don't know. Not a favorite figure of mine, with the Lobot thing around his head and the antenna.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's Lobot, right?
Yeah.
I guess I have this phrase for a couple Cobra characters in Real American Hero, which is that they wandered in from another toy line. Like Wild Boar to me just wandered in from Return of the Jedi, and is it the Bugs? Who drives the Maggot? Yeah.
Yeah, with the dome.
Is it brown with sort of a black visor?
Oh, sorry. I'm thinking of the underwater vehicle. Yeah, the
Secto Viper. Yeah, the Bugs. Bugs just
they're amazing.
Good figure. Looks like just wandered in from some other toy line. And Jay, now that you mentioned Lobot, yes, Psych Out slightly wandered in from another toy line. He looks like a Joe. He kind of doesn't look like a Joe.
And, that was one where I kind of wondered what was going on with that one. But I'm happy to hear that Ron Rudat did it. How long was he on the brand? He left after like year 4 or 5, didn't he? Or did he still stay on in some capacity?
I think it's the first 7 years.
Oh, okay.
That he did. Let's see. Kurt Groen showed up in, I think it's 85. But like he and Pennington initially were doing accessories, and were working with Rudat. You know, I think he would do a pass and then they might take over. I don't have all my notes in front of me, and then Rudat did some work later on. Like he did drawings for that final wave of Star Brigade. I have like the Cobra Commander who's got the astronaut helmet, who's in blue and black and purple.
Yeah.
And the Duke, who's on the underpainted Duke, who's green and gray from that same year. I have photocopies of Rudat ink drawings of those guys.
Very good.
Interesting.
I'm sort of counting forward from 1982, 7 years. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 88 is, I think, is a year that was more dominated by the likes of Pennington and Co, because that was like let's say Shockwave, Storm Shadow, Hit and Run, Muskrat, Voltar, etc.
I think that was probably the last year that I had every figure, or almost every figure. I think after that, it would just be like 1 or 2 per year. But of that year, with, like you said, Shockwave, Storm Shadow, I think I had most of those ones.
Yeah.
And after that, I kind of dropped off and would just pick up, like, you know, the blue Major Blood with the yellow, and I think there was another
Sonic
Roadblock and a Stalker in black that I got after that. But I was pretty much done with it by that point. And there's a lot of characters that I don't even know who they are. Like, I was doing this recap, and of course I know Heavy Doody because he's been in the movies and you hear about him and stuff. But I was like, was he a machine gunner? I'm like, I don't know, because it's just not a figure that I ever had or had any kind of connection to.
Sorry, I'm gonna do a fact check here. Kurt Groen showed up at Hasbro in February of 1989, so I think it's Pennington who got there a couple years before that. Jay, I find it fascinating. I mean, of course, you know, Joe fans are different ages and were into other toys and activities at the time. Some may have been sort of primarily into Joe, and so others were sort of primarily into something else. And I forget that fans might have sort of only been lightly into G.I. Joe at a time when I was completely into it. And and I'm still always a little surprised, not in a bad way, when on Facebook, you know, someone posts like, "Hey, are the Deke episodes any good? I hear I don't like them." And, you know, like I have the DVDs, and I had them all taped on VHS off of TV, and when USA was rerunning them, I was watching them, and when they premiered in syndication in 89, 90, 91, I was watching them. So it's...
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen any of them.
A topic for another episode. There's some toy news this week that I know you two want to talk about.
Yes.
So behind the curtain peek here, we're recording on a Saturday. It's the day after Hasbro Pulse Live, where they released a bunch of information about the toys from the Snake Eyes movie. So I think it was 5 classified figures and a bunch of other things, including the toys line, and lots of role-playing knife play toys for children, which is great. Jay,
Well, that's kind of a surprise.
Here, kids, play with this.
Just make it a Nerf knife.
Does it have a nubbin on the end of it? Yeah, yesterday I've been off most of the week. That's why I've only done one break room sketch this whole week. And I was here in my studio at home, and I was just I was working on a video for the show, and I happened to get on Facebook, and I saw Diana Davis had posted a picture of the new figures, and I had to run in town to get some stuff, but I wanted to hurry up and do knock out a quick sketch. So I jumped on there, and I copied out the Scarlet and really, really rough, posted that online. At first glance, that's probably the only figure that I would be interested in getting. But like I told Mark before the show, I did ultimately decide to go ahead and order the rest of them for a couple reasons. I find that the classified figures are better once you actually have them in hand and you get to, hold them and move them around and look at them. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And the same with the movie. I fully expect to not like the movie, but I hope that I do.
Mhm.
And finally, you just can't find these things in the stores. So if I pre-order it now, then I don't have to worry about possibly paying extra for it later down the road on eBay or something like that. But yeah, the Snake Eyes, it looks like a Snake Eyes with Henry Golding's head. So,
Mhm.
you really can't go wrong there, I guess. Storm Shadow, I didn't look at too deeply. Like I said, I did study the Scarlet because she's one of my favorite characters. And her outfit looks pretty cool. I'm really looking forward to getting that one. The Baroness, not sure where they're going with her. I think in a way, and I was thinking about this morning, somebody called her a feminazi, which is a Rush Limbaugh thing. And it's kind of, in a way, it kind of does describe Larry's initial impression of the Baroness when he created her. She was meant to be an American student that went overseas and got radicalized in like Belgium or somewhere. She became in with these terrorists. So, really the typical view that we see of the Baroness in the black leather and really super sexy doesn't necessarily jive with Larry's original depiction or idea of what he had with the character. And in a way, I think at least visually, this one probably does have a little closer DNA, I guess, to what he might have intended as far as the look goes. She looks like somebody that, I don't know, reads a lot and maybe hates everybody. So, we'll just see where it goes. I don't know where this story is going to go with, because Baroness and Scarlet were originally not necessarily part of Snake Eyes' origin. There's just, I don't know. I have a lot of questions about the movie. A lot of, like I told Mark, I don't want to say, oh, it's not my Snake Eyes. It's a different take, I guess. So we'll just see, what we all think of it when it gets here. And I hope that I like it. I hope that I like these figures. Like I said, I did order them all. I really hope that if the movie comes out in July, I don't have to wait until December to get the figures. Hopefully they bump those up to July as well. So then we'll have more stuff to talk about in Jay Talks Toys.
Yeah. And I saw a comment from Daryl De Priest, which I found interesting, which was that he said that it said something along the lines of that this toy release confirms his expectation that this Snake Eyes movie is going to be a ninja film and not a military film, which is an interesting observation that the genre that we're playing in here is it's going to be a ninja kung fu style film. It's not necessarily the GI Joe military aesthetic quite so much.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. Without looking at it, I'm not even sure that the Snake Eyes figure comes with any guns. I think he might just have swords and
I
knives.
think you're right. And they're cribbing from the IDW run of comics. They're leaning quite heavily into this. They're calling Snake Eyes' sword Morning Light. So that's interesting that they're obviously taking some inspiration from the more recent Hammer writings.
And from what I gather, that actually plays a big part in the story.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and the merchandise too.
Yeah.
They're
I'm
probably
guessing,
thinking,
and
"Great,
this is
this
just,
sword's got a name, and they're going to make a big deal of it. We can make
Yeah.
lots of stuff to sell to kids. Snap Snake Eyes' face on the side. Brilliant."
it's the Sword of Omens. Yeah, I'm almost guessing that Scarlet's role is possibly, like CIA or something. Maybe there's trouble brewing in Japan and she goes to investigate and she gets caught up in the middle of this. That'd be my guess. I mean, just from judging from the toys and how maybe, and the Baroness is there in an opposite capacity to stir up trouble, or maybe she's looking to recruit one or both of Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow. I don't know. I don't think, it's called Snake Eyes Origins. it seems like it's a completely different origin.
Yeah,
Just
and
judging from these things than the Snake Eyes that we saw in GI Joe ARAH 26 and 27. I guess the phrase "not my Snake Eyes" isn't completely wrong.
yeah,
It's
your Snake Eye still exists. So that's
there's
okay.
I would never be the guy that says, "Oh, that's not, you can't watch that." Blah blah blah. Watch it, man. Love it. It's a great take. Hopefully, it's a great take on a great character.
Yeah, hopefully it's good. We enjoy it.
I want to
and-
like it. I've already plunked down money for the toys, so I'm hoping that like Tim said, I'm voting with my dollars.
And if it's a success, then maybe we'll get more of the GI Joe film that perhaps some of us would be keener to see. But we shall see.
Well,
Let's,
and I wonder how the if the Lady J series ties into this at all. We've kind of seen different things that
interesting,
say
yeah.
that it might somehow. So
Yeah.
that's another thing to be curious about.
We're gonna talk about comics from Devil's Due. It's something you wondered if Talking Joe would ever do. I guess we'll explain it all to you. Gonna take some time to read the books we've never read.
Tim is jumping at the bit, ready to tell us how much he loved these issues.
He seemed really excited about it, didn't he?
He did. I just got this vibe of positivity emanating
Yeah, I can feel it.
across the waves. So today we are talking Devil's Due issues 10 to 13. The creative team, story, Josh Blaylock, pencils, Jamal Eigel, Kevin Sharp and Mike Miller, inks, Clayton Brown, Rick Ketchum, John Larter, colors, Hi-Fi color design, letters, Dreamer Designs, edits, Scott Whirl, and graphic design from Mike Norton. Before we dip into the delicious interiors, let's have a look at the covers.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
So we've got issue 10, Zorona, with Steve Kurth still hanging around on the book. It might be the last we see of him for some time, but this cover is, I think, the last remnant of his fingerprint on the book. Zorana in color with a green Zartan looming in the background like a Mufasa. Tim.
So I appreciate that the background is knocked out in one color or two or three versions of green. For Kurth, this is a good drawing. This drawing doesn't wow me or excite me. I think in general, because G.I. Joe is an action comic, G.I. Joe covers should have action. And this is one of my comments on a lot of the early IDW covers too. Generally, I'm not interested in a character just standing there, even if it's a very cool drawing. Like we were talking about Mike Zeck earlier, and I think G.I. Joe covers should be kinetic, because those covers that we remember from all the TV commercials are so kinetic. So, or if you're going to have a cover where a G.I. Joe character or a Cobra character is just standing there, I don't think you should have, in a 4-issue arc, 3 of the covers perform that function. But, in 2002, Marvel institutes this new policy, which is sort of typified by all the Mark Bagley, like Richard Isanove covers on Ultimate Spider-Man, which is covers have to be readable from a distance. So covers should just have one bold image of a character. And, even for Uncanny X-Men, it's a team book. Each cover is just going to have one character. And for a while, all those Marvel covers for all their books were really bold and they really popped. But, this cover, it's the return of Zartan's sister, Zorana. Okay. I mean, every issue of the Devil's Due book has brought someone back in a cool reveal or a surprise move. And, You know,
She
like
hasn't been missing.
yeah, I don't. You know, it's fine. It just doesn't do anything for me.
And then continuing that theme, we've got two covers of standing and posing. The first of those is 11, where we've got a lineup of Dreadnoks, Zartan, Buzzer, Torch, Ripper, Monkey Wrench, Zanya, and flanked by a couple of troopers. Another posing one of Firefly on 13, so sort of Firefly solo in a spotlight, and then one more kinetic action sequence of a bat wrestling with Spirit, Roadblock, and Lady J.
So Joe Benitez pencils these 3 covers.
Yes.
I like the Dreadnought one because it's fun to see these characters in their original costumes. But the cover doesn't quite make sense to me because I always found, like, I don't think that Dreadnoks work well with Cobra. So even though this is sort of like a portrait, it's like the photographer is like, okay, everyone, get in a little closer. Like this scene doesn't exist. I understand that. I don't see 2 Cobra soldiers or 2 Cobra officers doing anything sort of with some, it's like those other 2 characters should have just been Dreadnoks, or they shouldn't be in the image, and then the Dreadnoks can be spread out a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean, they could have fit in Thrasher and Road Pig there, really.
Right.
They wanted 2 extra characters, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely more Dreadnoks they could have used.
Also, I don't like the coloring on any of these covers, and here's why for number 11. Like, are these 2 Cobra soldiers are their costumes made out of satin? They're so shiny. It's so dumb. And the background, like every square and rectangle that could be a light, like a light in the ceiling or some glowing computer button, is not only colored as a light, it's colored as glowing, right? And then 12, I like the idea of this cover for 12, but all 4 characters are overlapping and bunching in a way that feels cramped. And then 12, Firefly is overdrawn. There's too much noodling detail on his in his camo, his backpack, the little like bits of hatching and cross hatching, and then on top of that, it's colored really aggressively. So if I'm looking at his elbow, where he's got like an elbow pad, like his arm just disappears into his body.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And then it's like, oh, cool, it's his original costume, because I don't love the redesign inside the story. No. And again, I do think you're allowed to have occasionally just a cool guy standing in a cool guy pose. I think I'd prefer it be in front of some deep background rather than like a brick wall that's 5 inches behind him, because there's no depth there. It's exciting that Joe Benitez drew these covers, because at the time, I think he was doing work for Top Cow. Someone might correct me if I'm wrong, but he's in 2002, 2003.
Probably was.
Okay. I can't remember what book, and if not Top Cow, I can't quite remember where he was, but that like Mark Silvestri flavor, right? That Michael Turner flavor. And it's exciting that a hot image guy is doing G.I. Joe covers. This just looks ahead to G.I. Joe Origins. Is it 21, the like later silent issue with Snake Eyes?
I think it might have actually been 19 or something.
19. Okay, right. Sorry.
Like that.
Right.
I looked it up the other day, because you'd expect it to be 21, but it wasn't.
Right, and I appreciate it's not 21, because it's much easier to Google. You don't get hits for the other thing. So Benitez, 15 years later, draws one issue of G.I. Joe that's a silent issue with Snake Eyes that Hama not only wrote but did the breakdowns for, which doesn't get
that was
credit.
19.
Thank you. Cover is okay. Jay?
Yeah, I wonder what the process in the background was for having Firefly appear in his version 1 rather than the redesign. Maybe he did it on spec and they just liked the image. Or maybe he just wanted to do the original. Sorry, Jade. You continue.
Who knows? All right, I'll try to go through these really quickly. Number 10, The Return of Zorana. It's interesting to me artists' different takes on Zorana. You guys know I did one this week, and I kind of had a my own version of her. Kurth's is actually very similar to mine. Try to make her a little more attractive. I've seen some other ones this week. Larry did a sketch of her for somebody at a con, and they shared it, and I mean she was just ugly. But I mean that's the way that I think that a lot of times she's portrayed to be that way. And I've seen some custom figures that while they're great figures of an ugly woman. And, you kind of think, well, what is she supposed to be? Is she supposed to be really attractive? Is she supposed to be this kind of just rough, woman that you'd want to stay away from? There's that. Kurth did a great job on the motorcycle. Zartan in the background looks all right. The curious thing for me about this number 10 cover was at the very top, it says nominated for best ongoing series by Wizard Magazine. I had to wonder if there were any other ongoing series published that year, if this was nominated for the best ongoing series. But anyway, that's my little dig, so I'll leave that alone. And then, so that was, let's see which one. That was number 10. The one with the dreadnoughts, that's a good one. I think Tim pretty much covered it. There's no reason to have the Cobra Troopers on there. I love Monkey Wrench on the front of it. Monkey Wrench was always one of my favorites. I thought he was a great figure, and he looks really cool in this cover. I love his gun. The Dreadnoks, yeah, they all look great. Really, really don't have too many complaints, other than, like Tim said, it's probably just a little overcolored. I do kind of like how, and Benitez does it in this cover, and they also do it on the inside. You see, every time they show Ripper, he's basically just like hair with glasses. I mean, his beard and mustache have just like completely taken over, which is hilarious to me. But as opposed to Buzzer, I don't like how they draw him on the inside at all. But these ones are very accurate to the original, so that's pretty cool. Number 12, we've got Roadblock, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes, Spirit fighting a bat, and that's a pretty cool one. Like Tim said, this is an action-packed arc. The whole thing is just one great big long chase scene. So there's really no reason why every cover shouldn't feature some element of that chase. And finally, on this one, we do get that. So that kind of fulfills that role. It's a pretty good one. I could complain about their costumes, and I'm sure we've probably done that enough. But compared to some of the other ones that we've seen, that one's pretty cool. The Firefly one from number 13, I think that's pretty good. I do agree with what Tim said. There's a lot of unnecessary cross-hatching and stuff, and I hadn't really thought about it until he pointed it out. That elbow does really get lost in the rest of the drawing, but it's nice to see Firefly in his original costume. I think without a lot of the line work, if this had just been, most of this had been left to the colorist, I think it would have worked a lot better. But it's good. I mean, overall, they're all pretty decent covers. Even Kurt's cover for number 10, I think, was not, I wouldn't give him any grief about it. The motorcycle, he did a really nice job on the motorcycle. Motorcycles are hard to draw. There's a lot of detail, and if you're not familiar with how they work, especially, it's a complicated machine to try to get right and look right.
Yeah, harder than a brick wall.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll add one tiny thing which I forgot to say. Something I like about the cover to 11 with the Dreadnoks is that Benitez draws Buzzer as skinnier, not as bulked up as the other three male Dreadnoks. And I appreciate when artists draw different body types.
Yeah.
And it's fair if every character in all of G.I. Joe is in shape and really muscular. But, one of the Dreadnoks might have a different personality. And while, Monkey Wrench is doing reps on the bench with, like a barbell, maybe, Buzzer's like, I don't do that exercise stuff.
Well, Buzzer's the college educated one. He's probably, reading
Right.
Tolstoy somewhere in a corner.
Right.
He's not going to be as bulky as the other ones.
I love Tolstoy. My favorite's Buzz Lightyear.
You got to be joking.
Okay, rounding out these covers, there's also a trade paperback which has got a bat on the front cover, and it's kind of like a half and half cross section, sort of showing underneath its it's interesting that they go for these different trade paperback covers, but nothing too exciting, particularly for such an action-packed arc. We do have David Michael Beck on the back covers again, which is nice to see that Devil's Due are making that investment in the book with the painted art. So we've got Gung Ho, Zartan, Mindbender, and an upside down Firefly. I don't think necessarily any of these are massively iconic images in of themselves, but I think the Firefly image is probably the most satisfying out of the four, just from the perspective of it's doing something quite different and having him dangling upside down there, as well as mirroring the Firefly on the front of the cover.
I'll just say two quick things and then pass it to Jay. I love the mood of the Zartan piece. It's creepy, there's menace. And the Dr. Mindbender piece, I appreciate the weird fisheye lens and that it's much more of a portrait and less of a full body pose. But this one compositionally to me looks like the character was drawn and painted first, and then the background was figured out around the character, which feels like it's sort of not integrated or there's some arbitrary decisions. But I like the wacky colors, Jay.
I can't say I'm a fan of that Mindbender cover at all. It just, I mean, I kind of see where he might be going for. You know, Mindbender, obviously it's in the name. He plays with people's minds. So maybe, you know, he's got someone tied up in the brainwave scanner or on an operating table and they're drugged with something. And, you know, they see this dude and he's all out of perspective. And I mean, it works if you think of it that way. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the shading and the color on his face. His mouth is kind of distorted. It's, not my favorite. The Zartan one is kind of cool. I think there's almost too much yellow in that one. I mean, the thing about Zartan is it goes back to his design. I don't like the black shirt, you know, that covers up everything. The only thing that we see of Zartan is his nose and his mouth, which, you know, there's storyline reasons for that, but that problem is resolved in this issue. So I don't see why they even bothered doing it. They should have just left the original design, and that could have saved him some story space. And you know, they could have just not done this. Let's see, the Gung Ho one. That one's all right. His vest looks a little flat. That is Gung Ho, right? Yeah, I see the. Yeah, I don't know.
You can't mistake that tattoo.
Yeah. I guess the more I look at, the more I could find things to pick apart about it. So I don't want to look at it too much. The Firefly one probably is the best one, like Mark said. It does give you a really good shot of Firefly. I mean, he's descending upside down to, looks like plant a bomb or something. You know, the figure work is probably the strongest on this one. Yeah, this one's probably the best of the four, I would say. Well, between this and the Zartan, for me, the Zartan just has a problem with having the shirt, but the Firefly one is really strong. I like how he's got the ropes, you know, that are going around his leg and you know, through his legs, and he's got them in his hand, and that one hand that's holding it, that his index finger is out. This one would have been a hard one to work out compositionally. So kudos to Beck for that.
Very good. Now let's get on into the insides, and the best place to start is with a plot breakdown.
The Joes attempt to apprehend Zarana during a dead drop inside an international airport. Zarana escapes with the help of the Crimson Twins, Tomax and Zaymont. General Hawk discovers that one of the jugglers, General Winters, is in league with Cobra, and that another juggler, Congressman Cartwright, has evidence of the General dealing Destro as well. Zarana brings the product of the dead drop to Dr. Mindbender, the final component needed to create an updated super battle android trooper. However, once activated, the new bat goes haywire and escapes into the streets of Chicago, wreaking havoc and leaving a path of destruction behind it. General Hawk confronts Winters and tells him he'll be working for him now. His first order is to approve funding for a new pit and more Joes. Heavy Doody confronts the Super Bat in Chicago, but is seriously wounded in the conflict. The Bat retreats to the sewers for repairs as Heavy Doody is surrounded by the Dreadnoks. Heavy Doody is rescued by more Joes, and they follow the bat into the sewer. General Winters makes a frantic call to an unknown operative and tells him it's time to tie up loose ends. The Joes, the Dreadnoks, and a League of Vipers are almost defeated by the bat until Firefly arrives and reveals he was behind its awakening and subsequent rampage. Firefly takes the bat with him to his mysterious client. In Washington, D.C., Congressman Cartwright tells General Hawk he will receive the requested funding for a new pit and more Joes. And as Hawk leaves, Cartwright's office explodes.
Kablooey. Okay, where to start? Just continuing on from the last episode, I guess. Tim, you said how much you were looking forward to seeing Jamal Igle tackle a whole issue on his own. Did he deliver with the first of these four?
Yeah, the art in the first issue is clear and appealing, exciting and dramatic. Igle continues his wonderful work with facial expressions. The sneak peek, the undercover Joe agent with the green hair. I mean, Igle's drawing different facial types, and the scene with Damon and Firewall training with Beachhead, they've got a great range of expressions. I get a little bit of a Kevin McGuire vibe, who draws the best facial expressions in all of comics, all of American comics. Where the art doesn't work for me is the coloring, but that's the whole arc. Igle does a great job. I wish he would draw more G.I. Joe then or now.
I get the Kevin McGuire reference, and just a fun fact: if you've never encountered him at a convention, when he's doing convention sketches, he'll say, "Pick a character and an expression or an emotion," and then sort of just portray that. So they're always sort of emoting in some form. So it's not just a typical superheroic expression on a character, which can get a bit samey. So yeah, it's a fantastic way of approaching it. As we were talking about Sneak Peek version 2 being introduced in this issue, I thought that was interesting in terms of where they approached it, and somewhat mishandled it, because there was a scene where I think it's Duke is talking about him being on this mission, and someone gives a somewhat flippant offhand remark. It's, I think, either Scarlet. Or,
she says the Periscope guy.
The Periscope guy, yeah, because this is, he's named. This is the guy that they're talking about. The Periscope guy is the guy that died in that. Is it Trucial Abysmia? They devoted an entire issue to that particular kind of, plot point and building up to it, and it, being one of the most emotional elements of the entire, original Marvel run. So to be, so flippant, probably
right.
a little bit of a misstep, and they actually call that out in the letter page that a number of people, did actually write in to say, I don't think you handled that particular point well.
To their credit, Devils Do, in responding to that letter, apologizes.
Yeah, I think you don't have to think about it too hard to recognize that. Yeah, that probably wasn't the best way of doing it.
But a similar scene happens in, I think it's the third chapter. Sorry, I have all four comics in front of me, and sometimes it's just faster to guess rather than flip through. But
quite all right.
Roadblock meets Heavy Doody, and he says,
"That's the correct response, Jay."
Yeah, he says, I was going to say something about that.
He says, "Who are you supposed to be, my replacement?" And that dialogue rings false in so many ways. Like, first of all, it's like, no, the team has always been getting new recruits. There have always been redundancies, and either some of the older Joes get promoted to desk jobs, or they retire, or we just don't see them, right? They're just sort of off panel doing something else at the pit on a mission. There aren't any arguments. There aren't any long-standing arguments between any of the Joes, right? Like, this is like Star Trek The Next Generation. This isn't Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where you have permanent disagreements between, like, cast characters. But There's no reason why, if a reinforcement or a new recruit joins your team, you'd make some confused or snide reference or joke that is only for the audience's benefit. It's because, like, yes, I'm sure a lot of fans, when they saw Heavy Doody, when that action figure shows up or that character shows up on the show around 91, they said, this guy's like Roadblock. He's another Roadblock, right? But, like, you know, I mean, the white guy who was a laser trooper got replaced by another white guy who's a laser trooper. There's no scene where Flash is like, "Well, you're supposed to be sci-fi, my replacement." Like, that's terrible.
Yeah. And I agree. I almost feel like that's what the line was meant to be. Like, Roadblock's not saying, "Who are you, the new machine gunner?" He's saying, "Who are you, the new big black guy?" I'm
right.
Like, come on.
Okay.
That was cheap.
If you had to do this joke, and I don't think you should, then you'd introduce Double Blast, who's a new version of an older Roadblock action figure at a time when Hasbro didn't have the name Roadblock, and it's clearly Roadblock, and they gave him a name that was sort of as close as they could come up with. And I don't know the exact year, but that's right around here. It's 2002 or 3, I think. And so, you know, you could do a dumb joke where Roadblock's looking at himself and they're like, this is Double Blast. And Roadblock is winking to us, the reader, because we know that they're really the same character. But you know, again, this thing like in the first X-Men movie where they're flying to Ellis Island and they're in their costumes and Wolverine's tugging at his collar and Cyclops says, you know, because they're wearing black leather, he says, what do you expect? Yellow spandex? Cyclops, don't piss on your fans. Yes, I've been reading X-Men comics my whole life. I expect yellow spandex. We can decide that yellow spandex doesn't work in these movies, but don't make fun of me for liking the source material, right? Like, if you're going to make it more realistic, do it nicely or subtly, right? So the scene with Roadblock and Heavy Doody, ugh.
Yeah, it was groan inducing for sure.
And again, it's like, it's one panel and it sort of ruins the whole issue. So
it's a big panel.
If this feels like disproportionate, like, why are you guys complaining about one line of dialogue? It's because it's that bad.
It's a reoccurring theme of a kind of tongue-in-cheekness, playfulness, which sometimes just takes you a little bit out of it. That
falls flat.
Yeah, that maybe sometimes it works better than others. So maybe we've got Beachhead training the IT crowd there, and he goes, "Psh, pathetic," which is a nice little nod to his famous scene from G.I. Joe the movie. And maybe Zorana is teasing Tomax and Zaymot and calls them Siegfried and Roy. And maybe that works a little bit better. But when you're actually just kind of, you know, ripping into the franchise itself and what you're doing and laughing almost at, you know, what has come before or what even you're doing in the story at that moment, it just, come on, you know, have you know, be playful with it, but don't take don't undermine what you're doing, essentially.
One of the references, Mark, you just referred to is Beachhead echoing the animated movie, and there are two more moments like this where this comic echoes the cartoon. One where Zorana wants to give Mainframe a chance because there's a 1986 episode called Computer Compilations where they have a relationship and it's great. And then Jinx has a scene. It's subtly done. And then unfortunately there's a Deke episode a couple years later where Zorana has feelings for another Joe, but Mainframe's not a character anymore, so it's Big Ben, and so it's like, no, I want this to continue from the old anyway.
Ding dong.
And then secondly, in this Devil's Due run, because we're talking about comics and not cartoons, Jinx makes a reference to her bad luck, which, sorry, I don't have Jinx's file card in front of me, but is that only in the animated movie, or is that from the toy
I would have to
package
look
as
to
well?
check that.
So, you know, I don't love the connections to the animated series, but I don't. It makes sense, you know. That's a touched point for a lot of people, and in the case of something like Extensive Enterprises, you know, it's good material. Why not use it? It also helps me sort of separate. It's like, yes, this continues the Marvel continuity, but it's its own thing.
Yeah. The bad luck thing was only the movie, it wasn't the file card. Just double
Yeah, and
checking.
I don't remember that ever being referenced in the original series either.
Yeah, but to be fair, in the original series, Jinx only appeared in quite a small handful of places, so
She appeared enough.
You're saying she appeared twice, and that's enough.
That was enough.
So, should we talk like big picture about the story?
Let's do it.
I usually start. I want to start with Jay because, I guess, because this is all new for you. You didn't read this at the time. Does the arc work for you? And what about it is good, and what about it isn't?
Well, like I said when I was talking about the covers, it is a pretty straightforward chase scene. Does it work? Yeah, I think it did. I don't know. I mean, there were little things that got in the way of the bigger overall picture and enjoyment of it. I think that Blaylock is doing a pretty good job plotting these out. This probably could have been condensed a little bit. I always go back to like G.I. Joe #1 and how much story was packed into one issue. I could easily see this being one issue during Larry's run. But and when I was doing the plot, I was breaking the plot down. Okay, the Joes intercept Zarana. Zarana gets something to Dr. Mindbender. It's part for a new bat. Bat goes crazy, wreaks havoc. Joes come in. Cobra comes in. Dreadnoks come in. Great big, cluster in the middle of the city. Firefly comes in. There was a lot of confusion for me around Firefly and like who he was working for and what was going on there. And there were a couple panels too that I specifically want to ask you guys if you understood what was going on.
Go for it.
I don't know. Again, it could have worked a lot better. There's, like I said, there's little things that keep the enjoyment of the overall from being a lot higher.
And I think to your point, there's a letter that it's actually published in one of the letter pages here, where they reference that it's a bit clear that Devil's Due here, the approach they're taking is trying to write to the trade. So effectively, they're going to decide on, okay, this is going to be a 4-issue arc. This is broadly what's going to cover, and then we can collect it as a nice 4-parter, which is the standard for trade paperback collection in this era. And probably we've got 3 issues worth of content here, which is being drawn out into 4 issues. That just the bat chase,
or even 2
sequence. Yeah, it Larry certainly would probably only have taken 2 over these at most. The bat chase, in the sewers, back again, the this back and forth with the Dreadnoks. It seems a little bit repetitive.
And one thing too that kind of makes it seem like it doesn't need to be as long is the fact that when you get into the later issues of this arc, there's so many big panels. Like we talked about the early, like the reinstated arc, how there were a lot of little panels. They've almost gone the opposite direction. Who is it that draws the last 3 or 4 issues? Kevin Sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he uses a lot of, like, you might have 4 or 5 or 6, which is, that's your standard grid, but he's kind of changed it. And the camera, a lot of times, what I refer to as the camera, is real close on the characters. You got a lot of really close headshots. His art for me didn't really work. I mean, it wasn't bad. He's definitely, he's a talented artist, but I don't think he's that great of a storyteller, at least when this came out. And I think that it's just, there's a lot of problems with it. But like I said, I do credit Blaylock again for his ability to kind of make a good chase scene. And I think that his plotting in some respects is really good. But then maybe when it gets to the scripting stage and the pencils, it kind of makes for a head scratcher sometimes. But I can see what he's trying to do, like with the jugglers and that stuff. Like I said, all the Firefly stuff was unclear, and especially later when Firefly shows up and Zartan's like, "You're behind this," and I was like, "How did he get that Firefly was behind this?" I didn't see him at all during the issues or the part where the bat escaped. I don't know what he had to do with any of that. And Firefly kept talking about his mysterious client, and I'm like, ugh, why do we have to have like all these different factions and stuff all over again? And the stuff with, I don't know, Cartwright and the other one. I mean, right in the plot breakdown, I had to go back through a lot of that stuff a couple of times, and I'm still not sure that I got it right. Tim jumps in there with the evil laugh. Let's hear it, Professor.
Here come the nitpicker,
Timmy Finn,
analytical prankster,
Timmy Finn,
picking holes in your colouring,
Timmy Finn,
still love G.I. Joe.
Timmy Finn.
No, he won't lie. Yes, he testify. Anyone can see there's some criticism. Anything that he don't know ain't a thing that's worth to know. Pull him back and let him go. Criticism. Here come the nitpicker,
Timmy Finn,
analytical prankster,
Timmy Finn,
picking holes in your colouring,
Timmy Finn,
still love G.I. Joe.
Timmy Finn.
No. That's a laugh of relief, because the final two pages I was confused.
Yeah.
And I feel bad. Sometimes I'm reading a comic by a really smart writer and I can't follow it. And I think, am I not smart enough to follow this? Are my friends understanding this?
Yeah.
Or sometimes I see a movie and like, it's like all the bad guys kind of look alike. It's like all one family, or like it's like they're all like kind of wearing, it's like, I don't know, like a crime movie, and it's like just a whole bunch of like white guys with like black suits. It's like, is the movie not like differentiating these? Like some of them should have goatees and some of them should have hats, and everyone's name should be very clearly said aloud. Is it me? Am I not smart enough? Or is the movie not giving me enough information? So the final two pages, I couldn't follow. It's like, I understand what's about to happen. Like clearly something's going to blow up and someone's going to die, but I don't know if it's this government guy, that government guy, Firefly's patron. Is this a misdirect and Firefly's patron is really just Firefly? And
is it Firefly in the car?
Right. Okay.
I'm
so
like, where is General Winters? He's
okay. Yes. So
he makes a call to somebody. There's somebody in the car. I'm like looking at this whole thing. I'm thinking, where is Winters at? And who is in the car? And where is the car? It seems like the car is parked outside of whatever building Cartwright and Hawk are in. We don't get Winters' location. We only see him in one panel. We don't know if the guy in the car is Firefly. I assume that it is.
Jay, you have so hit the nail on the head. This is no. I feel really good, because when I read comics and I grumble to my friends or my manager, or I blog about, storytelling in G.I. Joe 250 or Snake Eyes Dead Game #1,
through 5.
Drawing comics, it is a very specialized skill. It's not just being able to draw people and clothing and guns and airplanes and horses and trees.
Right, storytelling matters.
Storytelling and the visual continuity, who is who and where are they? Mm-hmm. And the two words that I think of over and over is establishing and reestablishing. Where is this character, or where is this character in? It's like, oh, so and so's in the room in front of 3 other people, and for example. The third to last page of the arc. So the third to last page of the final issue. They're all on the street or a rooftop. I can't quite tell. And a helicopter shows up, and Firefly says, "Oh, that's my ride." Yeah. Okay, so there's a panel of a helicopter landing, whoop, 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 whoop sound effect. And there's a little outline of a person standing in front of it. They're not quite a silhouette because they're not blacked in. They're colored sort of
but only one.
Exactly. There's only one character who's waiting for the helicopter to land. And then in the next panel, Firefly is sort of putting his arm up on like a robot arm that we see from behind because we're inside the helicopter. It's a reverse angle. We're looking at the helicopter, and there's a robot person gun something. And I thought, oh, is this like a helicopter with a gun on the side, and there's a gunner in the window who's like the machine gunner for this? And then in the story, it's like, oh, Firefly's taking possession of the bat, the robot, and the robot is getting on the helicopter first. But the bat wasn't in the previous panel when we would definitely see anyone standing next to Firefly. And certainly the bat wasn't in the panel before that, which is just a head and shoulders close up on Firefly. And then I go to the previous page.
The bat's not even on that page.
And the previous page, correct, is Firefly, Mindbender, and some Dreadnoks, and also some Joes talking. We don't see the bat. And then on the previous page, the bat is 5 or 10 feet away from Firefly. Mm-hmm. So drawing comics, right? Like if you want to get good at storytelling, like this is an exercise I give to my students. Pick a scene from a really good movie. Like, I mean, I don't mean story. I mean visual storytelling, like an Orson Welles movie or an M. Night Shyamalan movie or an Akira Kurosawa movie, or like anything that like Disney or Pixar or Blue Sky, right, have animated in the last 20 years. Pick a scene, pause every shot, and draw it. But I don't mean detail. I mean like with a Sharpie, like draw it in like 30 seconds and retroactively
storyboard it.
Retroactively storyboard the scene. And if there's a scene where the camera doesn't move and some characters do, you have to like draw another rectangle and use arrows and like draw where the people move. And if there's a camera move, you have to draw like an oddly shaped panel that's like a tall rectangle or a wide rectangle to account for the extra background that you're going to see. Like, I don't mean choreography like fight choreography, like action choreography, like kicking and jumping. I just mean where people are standing and not forgetting them. So absolutely, that second to last page, someone's on the phone. It's someone with black hair in a red car. They've got a glove and they're holding a car phone or a cell phone. And I can't tell if that's Firefly or not.
Yeah, I mean, the assumption is...
Oh, I guess it is, because all right. So it's about time.
Yeah, he says
Firefly.
It's about okay,
right. Okay. So the dialogue tells you for sure. So I apologize. That's a little less unclear than I thought. I'm gonna step to a larger. So storytelling is one thing. In terms of plot, interestingly, Blaylock is no longer providing layouts. He's just writing. There are many pages with more than the standard 6 panels per page. But the story does breathe a little bit more. There are also a lot of pages with, just 2 or 3 or 1 panels. So the pacing definitely feels different than the first arc and a little bit from the second arc. There are 2 things that Blaylock does that I like. There's 1 or 2 scenes where he just has, over a couple panels, a character just moves from one place to another. Maybe it's actually only in the first issue where Mindbender, over the course of a couple panels, it's like the 4th to the last page of the first part. Mindbender, over the course of 4 panels, he just walks over to the briefcase, opens it, takes out the special equipment. And he's in his lab, and he's like finally back in his like flamboyant Cobra costume. And yes, the final component needed for my masterpiece. I really like this scene because it slows down and it's a little bit of visual storytelling. It's a little bit of physical choreography. Mindbender was there, now he's here. This prop is important. And then
that's Jamal Eichel.
Yes. So yes, that might be all Jamal Eichel. The plot or the script may have sort of had this all be one panel, or it may have just been written, quote, Marvel style, and Eichel divides it into 5 panels of his own choosing. I'm not sure. You make up a good point. Based on how the visual storytelling in the other 3 issues is not as strong, yes, a lot of this must be Eichel. And then the other thing that Blaylock does that I like is that he is reintroducing more characters, like Firefly, who we want to see, and he's continuing this thread of Hawk and the Jugglers and the Joe's funding. Now, whether those things actually work in the story is a separate issue. My main problem with this arc is that I don't buy it. I don't understand how this bat is indestructible. It gets shot and blown up so many times in the first 2 parts and it takes no damage. I mean, like, hey, everyone, don't forget, the bat is a metal robot wearing clothing. I don't say that as a joke. Like, the design, it's a robot. It's like a Terminator endoskeleton wearing pants and a shirt with its sleeves rolled up in actuality, and it's wearing gloves. And like, they shoot it and they like blow it up, and the clothing takes no damage, and the head doesn't get dented, and like Heavy Doody like shoots it twice with his big weapon
in the head.
And I feel like a different writer would come up with some dialogue where some of this is explained. It's like, I just need like make adamantium or vibranium, like, impossibilium, cybertonium, whatever it is, decepticonium, like
explainium.
Thank you.
I think that we're led to believe that it can repair itself. However, that shouldn't mean that it can repair its clothing.
Right.
Now, I think that the shark
clothing
should have had it take damage as it went further along in the line, and it should have continually looked worse and worse. You're right.
And the clothing's just a little thing, and that's it.
But it's
if
a
you
big
miss
thing.
that, okay, right. I think it's a little thing that represents a big thing, which is that the story doesn't come up with enough of an interesting reason. I don't need like logic or comic book logic. There's not an interesting enough reason for this bat to be so impossible to take down, except that it's like, I guess this 2 or 3 issue story just needs to be 4 issues because it's going to be a skinny paperback, and you need at least 4 issues for that. And considering that this thing is like on a rampage, there's an awful lot of talk and very little damage.
Yeah, there's not a lot of rampage.
There's not a lot of menace or threat. Like, okay, different example. 1985 episode of the TV show G.I. Joe, The Germ. There's this giant blob that's like moving across like upstate New York towards a city, and the Joes have to stop it. It's escaped from a Cobra lab, and it grows and grows and grows and absorbs everything in its path. I understand the scale is different here because it's a giant blob, not a robot that's 6 feet tall. But there's a scene where the Joes are like, it's headed toward that city. And like over the shoulder, you see in the distance a city. It's like, oh, that's a populated city. This is going to be bad. And it's cute that Blaylock is including all these references to specific streets in Chicago because Devil's Due was headquartered in Chicago. But it's like this robot, it's got its like scary claw arm on the final page of the first part when it's threatening Dr. Mindbender. And then it just no longer has this scary claw arm. It's just hands keep opening up to show like 17, machine guns. And then it's like chest opens up to show like 5 machine guns. Like, isn't it going to run out of ammo? Like, a different writer who's keeping track of like its armament, both what it can fire and also its armor, is going to have dialogue. Like, Mindbender should be explaining this. Like, oh no, it's the Bat Mark III. Like, also I think it should look different from the original Bat. Because it's like, well, the Joes took care of this before, and on the cartoon, you just like mow them down with your machine gun. So,
punch them.
The central conceit of the story, like out of control bat, I don't find it interesting or believable.
You know what it just made me think of? You said a different writer would keep track of things like how much ammo it has, what its capabilities are. It put me in mind immediately to the recent ARAH episode that you guys talked about with Law and Order, where he's has to bandage himself up because he's wounded, and you just think, yeah, that's something that most writers, and you guys even talked about it, most writers wouldn't put that scene in there and have the explanation that sometimes you have to you take damage on the field, you have to deal with it. And this is, like you said, this is just, I don't know, comic book movie logic. I can't go to the movies with my dad because there'll be a shootout and he'll say, that guy just fired 13 times from a 6-shot revolver. I'm like, oh, come on, Dad.
But
I realized
also, it takes the jeopardy out of the story a little bit. The fact that I think there was a couple of the Joes got some quite bad damage. There was Heavy Doody got one to the shoulder, and I think Spirit as well. But they just shrug it off and continue on. It's like, if they can have such a what looks like quite a brutal wound, and just continue on just because they're hard and team players. It does seem to take away the sense of jeopardy somewhat from this.
In one panel, it looks like Road Pig gets stabbed in the heart, and I was like, holy crap, that's it for Road Pig. Nobody ever says anything about it.
So I realized that this arc, even though there's serious stuff like an office at the Pentagon or something getting blown up on the final page, and some Joes getting shot and us seeing blood, the treatment of the bat and like throwing all these guys at it, Cobra guys, Dreadnoks, Joes, it feels more in line with the cartoon. I don't mean the tone. I mean the sort of the like simplicity of the logic of it. It's like G.I. Joe comics are more complicated than this. The other comparison besides, say, The Germ from 1985, I know there are strong feelings about the Blue Ninjas in the last 5 years of Real American Hero comics written by Larry Hama, right? Like, say what you will about the Blue Ninjas. It's like, well, they're unrealistic, or they're not interesting, or they're too impossible to defeat. But when they show up, the stakes are explained and demonstrated. The Joes are like, go for the head. Last time we saw them, if we knocked off their head, they didn't work. Or like, oh, there's like a queen and it's a hive, and like they're all being controlled by this other one. Or like, oh, they've got this weapon, this like lightsaber nunchuck thing, and they dropped it, and now I have it, and I can take out a Blue Ninja robot. Or like, oh no, my gun isn't big enough. Hey, you other Joe with a bigger gun, I need your gun, right? Like the sort of the power levels and the like physical logic of it, even though it's like an AI ninja, which doesn't exist in the real world, the stakes and the logic of it are explained. And so, to Mark's point about the jeopardy, it's like, I'm worried when, like, during Artificial Intelligence, Destro and Baroness are fighting a bunch of Blue Ninjas, because it's like they're outnumbered and this might not work. And in this story, it's like, wait, you mean to tell me that like 5 Joes and like all the Dreadnoks and a bunch of alley vipers like can't take out one bat? It's like, no, you haven't adequately described to me how awesome this bat is. What a missed opportunity. It's like, oh, Blaylock, you could have invented like the super bat, right? And actually, overkill, right? There already is a super bat. So doesn't work. Sorry.
On the flip side, though, 4 issues of Super Vat versus 5 years of Blue Ninjas, yin and yang. Cool. Was there anything else we wanted to cover in talking points?
There was one panel. Like I said, there were a couple of things that I didn't understand. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was in part 2. You get a scene where Hawk goes and talks to General Winters, and then we cut back to Duke and Lady J. The next page has somebody, it looks like Hawk has been shot on the top panel, and he's laying over a desk, and it's like groan. And then we just cut back to the bat, and I'm like, where is this top panel supposed to be, and who is that? I totally didn't get who that was supposed to be, or where that was.
Is that the
at.
one with Sneak Peek version 2 being shot by the bat?
because
Is that
his
who
hair,
that is?
Yeah, because his hair is green.
Okay.
So on the page before where he's been shot.
Okay, I see.
He's on the screen,
and he's on like a
undercover calling in
something,
to Duke, who's in his black suit, and then his communication gets cut off, right? Oh, and then there's a line of dialogue that I don't think is very good, right? Undercover Joe gets cut off and is probably dead, and Duke says, "No, come in. I said come in. That's an order.
Work, phone. Work.
I want to talk about one panel in issue 11, which is chapter
Where the word balloon is pointing to the wrong person?
No, because you just said it, so that can count. It's
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I wrote it down on my list of things I don't like. No, it's page 19.
In number 11?
Yeah, it's page 19. So it's the second to last page. It's the second to last page of issue 11, chapter 2. The color is bad in this entire arc. And this middle panel where Heavy Doody's been shot and there's a police officer, and it's like, okay, this is how you don't color comics. The moon above her is colored like the sun. I don't mean yellow, I mean how bright it is. Every single window by her elbow, over her head, her other elbow, over the yellow and black pattern on Heavy Doody's shoulder. And this happens in every scene. Every building, no matter what part of Chicago.
Everything is glowing, like you said about the Dreadnoughts cover.
Every room in every building is like the lights are turned on, and they're turned on like maximum, like they're shooting a movie in there, and they've got all these extra lights. Okay, and my problem with this panel is this giant sculpture made out of like dairy butter, like cream or margarine. This like very shiny, weird. Like I showed this panel to my wife. And I said, look, this cop and this Joe are in front of this giant butter sculpture. And she laughed because she knows I'm like somehow making fun of it. And she said, that's not butter. That's like the birth canal in some like on a spaceship in some like alien movie. It's like the color and like Heavy Doody, the color of his all the gradients and the highlights and the shading on his shirt. They're just as busy and organic as this weird butter sculpture that he's in front of. So he kind of, even though he's different colors, he kind of disappears into it. Like less is more.
See,
oh
that
my
is
God.
That is awful. But I thought what you were going to go for was the ridiculous sort of highlights on the cop's badge, on their watch on their wrist, and then also on Heavy Duty's buckle. It's
on everything.
It's throughout. Whenever there's any metallic object, they just have this crazy radiant highlight just pinging like that.
No,
It's
because
like a Jar Jar Abrams film.
I wasn't gonna do the cops watch because page 8, panel 4 of issue 10, the very first chapter of this, there's a really nondescript panel. Nicely drawn by Jamal Eigel, where Mainframe is turning and looking back at Hawk, who's leaning over him because they're like at a computer, and every single piece of metal on Hawk, like all of his stars and the buttons on his uniform, they all have highlights.
Yeah, like they're glowing, like mini lights.
What? It's as if like he's in a photo shoot and there's like a giant light, like two. Anyway.
Yeah,
Mark
and you know that's all the colors. Eigel didn't put that in there.
Right. And like one of the things that I don't love about an entire studio getting credit for coloring a book is that you sort of don't know who it is and who's doing what. And clearly it's a different colorist on some of the pages in the final 2 chapters because the nighttime scene gets a lot murkier, but still not good. One of the things I liked about Wildstorm when they were coloring early Wildstorm books is that smaller in the credits, everyone who was on Wildstorm Productions or Wildstorm Colors or whatever it is, at Jim Lee's studio, they all got named. And some of those people became like well-known, talented solo colorists at other publishers later on. So that's it for my... Oh, and in issue 12, Mainframe, the I... Mainframe's name gets said aloud, and MAIN, the I has serifs, and there's a rule in lettering that if the word I is by itself, it has serifs in comics, and if the letter I is part of another word, like inside or insidious, it does not have serifs.
Yeah, it's
Just when we
interesting.
thought it was safe to look at the lettering again.
Yeah, just when you thought it was safe. Yeah, I'm looking at this coloring now as well, and beyond now looking at every single piece of metal and it having its own sort of light source attached to it. I am noticing there being very definite coloring differences between pages and between issues. So there clearly is different people's hands touching these things. Like on the panel opposite the one we were talking before with the cheese sculpture, that there's a bat jumping into the sewer, and it's jumping into water. We all know that water's what color? Blue. So let's just make this a giant blue mess that he's jumping into, of the brightest blue.
Sewer water is not blue.
Yeah, and in just flicking forward then to the next issue, first page, the coloring of that water is a very different color, although they're still going for these crazy highlights. Let's stop talking about the coloring. I'll do one of the things I wanted to mention was some G.I. Joe fashion.
Oh, thank you.
Armani, Prada, Versace too. Joe's changed their outfits from black to blue. Duke and Hawk, look but don't gawk. Changing their kit, whoa, is that legit? Swapping camo jackets, headgear and boots. It's now neon colours and funky spacesuits. Sci-fi stalker and even roadblocks. While Bill, Flint and Mutt gave me a shock. So go take a walk if clothes aren't your passion, because it's comic book talk and lovely G.I. Joe fashion.
So the one that I spotlighted was Heavy Doody. So we're talking about Heavy Duty 4 from 2002, being based on the Hasbro toy design that came out at the time again. So very, Devil's Due making a big effort to try and align the look of some of these characters to what is being released in the toy shops. And this particular version of Heavy Duty, as much as he looks in that big introductory splash page, but it's fairly ugly toy in terms of the look of those early G.I. Joe versus Cobra figures without the O-ring type articulation and just feeling like a different toy brand and very cheap and clunky, not entirely satisfying. And I think now that we're past that era, most of the Joe collectors have forgotten about it, chosen to not mention that one ever again.
So Heavy Duty. So in a previous episode, I mentioned what are the one or two attributes of a G.I. Joe costume design that you need to carry forward to a later version, right? It's like, version 1 of Beachhead, he's got his green, what's it called? What's the thing he puts on his face, his head?
Balaclava.
Thank you. He's got his green balaclava. So any future version of Beachhead, it needs that. Suddenly we see Beachhead and he's just got a big yellow beard and mustache like rock and roll. I'm going to think, oh, it's rock and roll. Or oh, is that topside? So Heavy Duty, he shows up in the Marvel comic briefly. He's got a couple episodes of the Deke run, and iconically to me, he's going to have a big gun thing or a big gun missile thing, and he's going to have a mustache, and he's going to have a baseball cap, maybe backwards. And
yep.
You can swap out different shirts or pants,
and maybe ripped shirts.
Sure, yeah. Right, and I know that. The designers were making a lot of different decisions in 2002, 2003, 2004 at Hasbro, and some characters weren't consistent. I look at this guy, Heavy Duty, in this arc that we're reading, and it's just Freight from G.I. Joe Extreme. No facial hair, and he's got a bandana or a skull cap on his head. It's like, oh, that's not Heavy Duty. Heavy Duty is a guy with a baseball cap and a mustache. This is Freight. And for those of you who aren't familiar with G.I. Joe Extreme, just take my word for it. This just looks exactly like Freight from 1996. And so, Jay, you talk about fashion and character design.
Well, the Heavy Duty, as he's portrayed in here, is just another one that I would say is boring. Like I said, I really don't know that much about Heavy Duty. It wasn't a figure that I had. But even still, I've seen him in Belomo's book. I know exactly what you're talking about. The baseball cap I have a vague idea of what the character is supposed to look like. This guy does nothing for me. His outfit is just plain. And then the page that you talked about earlier, where he's in front of the cheese sculpture, everything is the same color. The only thing that stands out is the striped bars on his sleeve. No love for me for this character, for this design whatsoever. Real briefly, I'm going to say that I still hate Jinx's gimp suit. But the one that gets me is there's in the first arc, or in the first issue, drawn by Jamal Igle, is the page that you talked about with Dr. Mindbender, where he's in his lab and he goes over and he opens up the case. That first panel, you get a big wide shot of Dr. Mindbender. And it's so easy to make fun of the original Dr. Mindbender, with the open shirt and the codpiece and the suspenders and the cape. I mean, the jokes write themselves. This one is not that much of an improvement. I'm like, what's wrong with just slacks and loafers, or something? I'm like, what are these boots that he's wearing? And he's got the big shoulder, the big bulky shoulders under the jacket, the big puffy sleeves. In the first arc, he was in like a suit and he had the fedora, and I thought, yeah, that looks like a creepy kind of, picture the guy in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the creepy guy that got the medallion burned into his hand. That's almost what that could have been. And that would have worked perfect for Dr. Mindbender. And then we get to the lab in this scene here, and I just have to look at that and say, what in the hell are they thinking? I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah. I'm interested to get
that outfit doesn't work at all.
I'm interested to get Tim's take on this, but this one I think gets a pass from me. It feels like it's enough in the spirit of Dr. Mindbender. He's got that, that sort of evolution of his monocle into glasses. He's got that kind of Fu Manchu moustache going on, which is different, but feels in keeping. There's a kind of mad scientist purple coat, which is, very stylized, interesting and very different to his V1, but seems in keeping.
But those boots
to me,
who's going to put those boots on?
Well, he had, his previous costume wasn't exactly credible. It was, topless, mostly codpiece, and then
I feel like we should have a page how they do sometimes where they'll have somebody getting ready and they'll show someone putting lipstick on and and a belt tightening and all that kind of stuff. I feel like we need a long, lingering shot of Dr. Mindbender's foot slowly going in that big long boot, and it's like,
but this
doesn't do it.
A lot of Cobra characters have knee-high boots.
Yeah, it's true.
To answer the question, what do I think of this? I agree with Mark. It's missing one thing. I don't quite know what it is. I think I need a V-neck. I need to see a little bit more skin to slightly recall his original costume. I think the three Cobra symbols.
Peekaboo holes,
no.
Mindbender was buff. He obviously likes showing that off. He's not going to cover it up with a coat.
I think the three Cobra symbols on his chest acting as buttons doesn't quite work. One is fine, but black and purple, something like a cape. It's in the right direction, and as Mark says, it's in this. I don't actually like this, but I appreciate the effort, and they got enough right. Also, Jay, to your point about him wearing a suit and a fedora, he's wearing that in the previous page, and that is draped over the chair.
Okay,
in the big reveal panel. So this is actually a scene that I've always wanted to see. I've always wanted to see this in a Joe comic. Is either in a locker room back at base, or like getting on the helicopter when a mission is over. I've always wanted to see a Joe sort of taking off a later costume and putting on an earlier costume. Because, when the Marvel run was nearing its end, everyone was in, it's like roadblocks in his version, it's not 3, because it's version 4. outfit, and Duke's in his like Desert Storm outfit. And I would love just one, but and then the IDW run starts and we get to reset and they're all just in their original costumes or a sort of modern updating of it. And I would love to see like just one scene somewhere of like Scarlet like taking off her Ninja Force boots, and like putting on just to nod to the fact that this is clothing and they can wear them sort of as personal choice. Like my brother and I talked about this once.
Yeah, there's no reason they couldn't kind of interchange them,
Yeah, but the way that here that Mindbender, was wearing his civilian clothes, then he puts on his mad scientist clothes.
His mad scientist clothes.
So
yeah. This
Mark,
conversation got me wondering whether from Mindbender's original look he had those sort of braces, silver braces over his costume. I wonder whether those were just a necessary mechanical addition just to support the weight of the codpiece on his original outfit. But yeah, he had knee-high boots, black knee-high boots on his original outfit and purple trousers. So it's kind of mirroring that almost, that the purple is now being extended to the top and the trousers are now black rather than purple.
When
seeing them side by
Mindbender,
side, kind of.
I wonder who designed the original Mindbender costume.
Ron
Was that
Rudat.
Rudat?
Yeah. And when he gets his battle core re-envisioning in 93, I forget, it's like he's got his mustache, he's bald, he's got his monocle, and there's a bunch of purple on him. Mm-hmm. So we hit 4 of the 5 important, he's wearing a full like shirt and full pants, but like that's Mindbender. And this is the thing. This is also why in the early IDW comics, like the Chuck Dixon ones that were in the new IDW continuity, when all the Joes, like Roadblock and Grunt and Zap, when they're just in like green modern military clothing, I can't tell who's who.
Yeah.
And like even that episode, growing pains and gray hairs and growing pains from '86, where the Joes go to a fitness club and some of them get aged up and some of them get aged down, and they're just wearing like workout clothing. And as a kid, I couldn't tell who was who. It's like there's just some guy wearing like blue sweatpants and like a gray sweatshirt, and then I hear Flint's voice come out of his face, and I go, "Oh, that's Flint." And then the bald guy behind him, well, that's definitely Gung Ho. But I really want to see these characters in recognizable outfits, even if those outfits need to change either over time for brand reasons or sort of within the story. It's like, this wouldn't make any sense if a bunch of Joes go underwater and are wearing scuba gear, but wouldn't it be fun if like Scarlet's scuba gear was a little bit her colors and Gung Ho's scuba gear was little his colors? And if your response is like, well, that's dumb, it's like, but the G.I. Joe's silly and Dr. Mindbender's a mad scientist with no shirt and a monocle. Like, why not?
I feel like they kind of did that sometimes in the cartoon, didn't they? When they would be in different environments, like sometimes their outfits would kind of have their same color scheme.
A tiny bit. Like, Quick Kick in the Arctic has, in the movie, he has like the snow. He has like a white jacket, but then also his red throwing star band is over that. That happened a little bit. I mean, I'm talking more about the comics, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Another little subtlety on the costume designs was that I noticed that when Kevin Sharp was drawing Storm Shadow, he toned down that design a little bit. So we lost a logo on the chest and forehead as well. So...
Oh, no.
Oh, good.
So now we won't know what team he's on.
What do you guys think of the Firefly redesign?
Don't like it.
It's okay. I think it's it's quite close to the original. It's hitting the main beats. I don't think it's a particular improvement per se, but much more to my taste than something green and neon.
Yeah. There's not enough to make it individual, to its. To me, it looks like someone just drew the V1 wrong.
I'm getting my dreadnoks mixed up, but something that I've always liked about dreadnoks is that they each have a distinct color. You know, like Monkey Wrench. Monkey Wrench has that maroon vest, and Ripper in the cartoon it's yellow, in the toy it's green, but he has a green shirt, right? And Buzzer has a yellow shirt, and Torch has
The
black vest, blue pants, right? Like, and then a little bit of red on his headband, right?
Yeah.
So they each have their own color, and this didn't come up when we were looking at battle files, but it does show up in a couple panels here. Is it Ripper and Buzzer are now in yellow? And I don't like that, because don't make these two guys look more like each other. Make them look different from each other. And I think I sort of don't even notice it, because on the cover of issue 11, where we see the Dreadnoks, it's their 1985, 1986 designs. And, Ripper... Well, I guess technically Ripper's shirt on the cover to 11 is kind of yellow. But it's also covered up by a barcode and a bunch of weapons.
Buzzer is completely wrong, because he's got like a black vest and like a blonde spiked hairdo, I guess is what you'd call it. Almost like a crew cut, but taller, like a kid and play kind of thing. And it just totally doesn't look like, to me, what he should look like at all.
Yeah.
Ripper, Ripper always had almost like a half shirt with, I don't know what it was, leopard spots or something crazy on it. But the only thing really that stands out to me with Ripper is, again, how much facial hair they tend to draw him, and also how big he is. There's several panels in here where he's just enormous. There's a page where the bat is fighting. It's a double page spread where the bat's fighting all of the Dreadnoks, and they're all kind of flying all over the place. And I don't know. I think that's supposed to be Torch up in the top corner.
Thank you. That's what I was talking about.
Right, and he's got a yellow shirt. But then, like I said, there's Buzzer, and Buzzer's got a black V-neck shirt on, and it just, you don't know who's who. That totally doesn't look like Torch at all. He should have a black vest. If they'd have just put a black vest on him, there'd be no question.
This isn't
why bother changing it if you're going to make it worse?
This isn't Star Trek. When I look at a photo of all the Star Trek characters, any version, original, Next Generation, like I expect, it's like, okay, Picard and Riker are standing next to each other and they both have maroon outfits, right? And then like Geordi and Worf are standing next to each other and they both have beige, right? Like that's different. If you have 5 Dreadnoks and they all have their own sort of different accent color, don't make 2 of them redundant.
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
I'm gonna gloss over some of the more superficial errors, like speech bubbles pointing at the wrong people, that kind of thing, and more sort of character-based focus here. Road Pig says, "You broke Road Pig's hammer. That's not good. Donald will be very angry," which makes no sense as well, because it's Road Pig is the angry fella, and Donald is the meek guy who's stuttering away in the background. So if someone's getting angry and you're talking about their personalities, make it be Road Pig and not Donald. Thank you.
Yeah, Donald would be like, "That's right, I can get a new hammer."
Yeah. This one's superficial, but on the cover to 12, the artists credited are Sharp, Larder, and Brown. But then on the inside front cover, it's Sharp, Larder, and Tony Akins. And Akins is credited with drawing the backgrounds. So Brown, who is an inker on other issues of this story arc, doesn't get credit for this issue. And it always makes me sad when the editor or the designer gets a credit wrong. They misattribute the cover to the wrong artist, or an inker or someone is left out, because you can fix that in the eventual collection, but the issues are forever. But I don't have a fun. It's like, well, actually, they meant to. I don't have a fun or funny. I can't give that a no prize.
You can't no prize that one.
Yes, I can't.
It's harder. A little thing which maybe error's strong, but it was an annoyance, was something that Jay had mentioned earlier, which was that I think Road Pig gets a knife to his chest somewhat randomly, and the only explanation would be that would be thrown by Spirit. But in the panel preceding that, Spirit has got 2 guns, dual wielding pistols, and shooting. So does he put those down, grab a knife? These pistols aren't going to do any damage. Better put those away. Get a knife out. Chuck that.
Yeah.
Pick up my pistols again. More of an annoyance that didn't make any sense. But
it's like Dead Game, where weapons just appear and then disappear.
Okay, I think we've almost reached the end of this. Was there a favorite line of dialogue?
Quote of the week, 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 quote of the week.
No.
This might be a good way of. I spotted one which might be a good way of just finishing off the show instead. As a new catchphrase and getting rid of the "see you down the road" stuff, which was something that Zorana said, which was "see you wankers." So we've this is well trodden ground. I am somewhat immature at times, I think I think this, calling someone a wanker, spelled WANKA here, is very much an English expression. Is it something that you would ever say in the States?
Only if you were pretending to be British.
Right, I wouldn't say it. That's what I was going to ask. Are the I don't know, the Zartan family supposed to be British? I haven't read the Dreadnoks Declassified, so I don't know.
They're just often portrayed, particularly in the cartoon, with a kind of Cockney, Mary Poppins, Gorblimey kind of accent at times, aren't they? Kind of somewhere between.
Well, that's the Dreadnoks, and I always thought that was Australian. Yeah,
Australian English kind of amalgamation.
Some of the Dreadnoks are Australia, and some of them are UK. Zartan
was supposed to be the English one.
I mean, in the show, Zartan and Xandar do not have accents, but Zorana does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where were the parents?
Maybe she studied overseas.
Well, there is the 3-issue Dreadnoks Declassified miniseries, which comes later from Devil's Due, which gets into Zartan's backstory, which I have not read, and we'll get to it at some point. Okay.
Well, that's what I said. I hadn't read that either, so I didn't know whether that explained where this accent comes from.
Well, yeah, I mean, it does. It sort of is created in retrospect, isn't it? It's not something that exists at this point in time either. Okay, let's. I'm somewhat fearful about this, but let's do some Joeage on this one. I know back in the day it wasn't a particularly well received arc. The as we talked about, it sort of moving a bit slow, seeming to take a little bit longer than perhaps it needed to. And when you're getting these books monthly, and you're chomping at the bit to see your favorite characters make a return, and some of the stories maybe echoing stories of your favorite type from back in the day, when you're treading water or going down an avenue that isn't enjoyable for 4 months, that's a long time to wait for the book to turn around and come back to a plot
Something
that you would
good
enjoy.
to happen.
Let's see. Let's save the best till last, I think, for this one. So let's you and me go first, Jay. Jay, why don't you start?
I'm going to use the Chief scale that says anything above a 5 means I didn't regret reading it, and or that I would possibly read it again. So going with that metric, I'm gonna say 4.5. It's almost there, but it's not quite. I couldn't see going back to this one again. So this is my lowest of the Devil's Due so far.
I'm not tracking my scores, so I'm not too sure how this steers against them. But I think I'll go 5.5. Not a regretful read. I in fact somewhat enjoyed going back to it and seeing it again after such a long time, where my memory of it was so fuzzy. I know that I didn't particularly enjoy this arc at the time, and it seemed to go on forever.
It just seems sloppy overall.
So not bad. I didn't feel it was necessarily bad per se overall, but not just not good. And what I am positive and optimistic about is that I remember this as being kind of one of the lowest points. So I'm hopeful that actually things will just be getting better from this point onwards. So yeah, there we go. Let's find out what Tim has to say.
4.
Okay.
Parts of this are 3.5, but I think I gave Reinstated, the first 4 issues of this series, I think I gave that a 4, and some of this is better than that. You know, this gets a lot of points for Jamal Eigel's handsome and very capable work in the first chapter. It's exciting that Joe Benitez draws some covers, even if they're not my favorite covers. Rather than, I've actually never thought of a scale as would I read it again or do I regret reading it. My scale is, I think this is because I've been lending comics to friends for a long time and selling comics. My scale is, would I give this comic to someone else to read? And very specifically, like, where in the long list of every G.I. Joe comic ever would this fall as a like representative issue or arc of G.I. Joe to, at minimum, convince someone that G.I. Joe is like worthy of their time and attention? Because people are like, G.I. Joe, I'm never going to read that. You know, the way that I would say, like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I hear some of the comics are great. Sorry, I'm never going to read Buffy the Vampire Slayer comics, right? The show doesn't mean anything to me. Like, sorry. And this arc would confuse and turn off anyone who, like, is not familiar with G.I. Joe or isn't familiar with comics or is familiar with G.I. Joe and comics. So sort of on a bad day, I think I might go lower than a 4. But you know, it does move the sort of larger arc along, you know, the jugglers and funding, and brings a couple of characters back. And you know, like the page where these Cobra soldiers fly in on the Cobra gliders when the Joes are parachuting in, like, and this is in issue 12. There's a 2-page scene. It's dumb because Roadblock and Spirit are just like yelling to each other while they're free falling, right? It's like they're parachuting into Chicago, and they're just like yelling across the distance to each other, but like, sorry, I can't hear you because like wind is rushing past me. And then they see some Cobra gliders, and that's exciting. And the scene visually does not work in terms of Jinx unlatching herself, or Jinx lands on a glider and unlatches the Cobra and he falls and then she gets his glider. Like, there are 5 panels that try to visually explain that and they do not. It's like, there isn't enough visual information visually drawn.
Sorry, I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about Sharp having the camera in too close a lot of times. Imagine if that scene had been pulled back a little bit. We could have seen the entire glider. We could have seen Jinx drop down on top of it. There's better ways you could have shown that happening
and
than in a bunch of close-ups.
Sometimes you need not just to pull the camera back. Sometimes you need a second panel. Sometimes you need a before and after. I need a panel of the Cobra guy in the glider, and then I need a panel of him like falling out of the glider. And those can be from the same angle, but in like exciting action comics, there's this tendency to not want to sort of draw the same image a second time and to swing the camera around to something more exciting. So I appreciate the attempt at this scene, that it's like a different kind of choreography. You know, they're falling and they're the gliders, and then this Cobra guy falls, but it falls short.
And ultimately, it was unnecessary.
Yeah, it does seem a little toyetic. It does seem like I know this didn't happen, but it feels like, oh, we got to sell this glider toy. Make sure we get it in there.
And what frustrated me somewhat about that scene is that it feels like people who are free falling, who jumped out of a plane, are traveling at a very different speed to people who are on a glider. So just the choreography of how that would actually work in reality didn't necessarily ring true to me, but
yeah,
I forgave it. It's comics,
Well, but this is where I'll pick on Blaylock, because it's like you don't have to write what you know. That's a good place to start. But this adage of write what you know, if everyone followed it, we'd never have stories about like serial killers, right? Because like there's no author that's already a serial killer, and a lot of really amazing stories wouldn't happen. And fake it till you make it is real. At the same time, expertise and research go a long way. And if you've never jumped out of a plane or like read about it, or I don't know, watched a documentary, and you write a scene where some guys jump out of a plane, you might get it wrong. And what I'm okay with unrealistic things in G.I. Joe comics. What I'm less okay with is inconsistency. Like, I want to stay in the story. Please don't break my suspension of disbelief.
I know. Let's talk toys.
J is here with a toy no fear, talking G.I. Joe collectibles. It's a favorite figure, let's pull the trigger, 3 3/4 inch or bigger. J.
Alrighty, today we're talking about Roadblock. Roadblock was first released as an action figure in 1984. He made his first appearance in G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero alongside Duke in number 22. From his original 1984 file card, Roadblock is the G.I. Joe team's heavy machine gunner. File name Marvin F. Hinton. Primary military specialty infantry heavy weapons. Secondary military specialty cook. Birthplace Biloxi, Mississippi. Grade E4. Roadblock's dream was to be a gourmet chef. He was working as a bouncer to earn money to attend the Escoffier School in France when an army recruiter convinced him that the army could train him to be a chef. Roadblock joined but found army menus and preparation techniques appalling. Transferred to the infantry. Qualified expert M2 Browning 50 caliber heavy machine gun, all Warsaw packed heavy machine guns, M16, M19 11A1 auto pistol. Now, if I'm not mistaken, all of the quotes on the bottom of the Joe's file cards were supposed to be taken from Hawk or from other Joes, and I think I read somewhere that the quote on Roadblock's file card was from Rock and Roll, which would make sense as he was also a machine gunner. It says, a 50 caliber Browning weighs 84 pounds. Add 50 pounds for the ammo. That's about 134 pounds of steel, generating 2,930 FPS in muzzle velocity at a cyclic rate of 550 RPM. Anybody who can handle that doesn't need a machine gun to keep me away. The original Roadblock figure wore orangish brown pants with a similarly colored camo tank top. He had gray gloves, black boots, and suspenders. He came with a green 50 caliber machine gun, a tripod, a backpack with removable ammunition box, and a green helmet. Now, despite being pictured as very muscled on the package art, and in the Marvel comic and Sunbow cartoon, the original Roadblock's arms were about the same size as every other Joe figure. Now, Roadblock was an immediate fan favorite upon release, and like Duke, he's been featured in just about every incarnation of G.I. Joe across multiple medias. He was even portrayed by The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, in the 2013 film G.I. Joe Retaliation. Although many fans, myself included, feel The Rock's character in the film bore little resemblance to our favorite gumbo-cooking, rhyme-talking heavy machine gunner. Now, in 1986, the character got a second figure release. This one sported a bulkier frame that was more in line with his appearance in the comics and cartoons. The 1986 version of the figure had gray pants, black gloves, and a white t-shirt underneath a neon green vest. Like the first version of the figure, he came with a heavy machine gun and a tripod. This one was listed on the packaging as an L7A21 GPMG heavy machine gun. And honestly, this gun, to me, looks like it's out of scale with the figure, something that the ARAH line would kind of become notorious for in later years. Now, the classified Roadblock figure, which was released in 2020, most closely resembles this version of the version 2, character. He's big and bulky, like that figure. And it really is second only in height to Gung Ho, which I kind of thought was weird. I would have gone with making Roadblock the taller of the figures. Now, unlike the 86 figure, The classified Roadblock has dark green pants, whereas the 86 figure had gray pants. They both have a neon green vest, but the classified is a little less neon. Now, the vests are very similar in design, and this was kind of surprising to me. They both have 3 red padded clasps down the middle, a red shoulder pad over the left arm, and a knife on the right side. Now, like several of the other classified figures on Roadblock, that knife is removable. But honestly, it's a little awkward because when it's in its sheath, it kind of sticks out from his chest. And I feel like it would have been better if they would have put that maybe on one of his legs. There's other noticeable differences between the two figures. The 86 version, of course, had a white t-shirt under the vest. The classified one doesn't. The classified figure has a large tattoo of a lion's head on his left arm, which is kind of cool. Obviously, the 86 version didn't. And like most of the other first wave from the classified line, the 2020 Roadblock sports gold trim on his shin guards, 1 gold knee pad, and gold accents on his vest. Now, there was a repainted figure of this version of this figure released recently that had all the gold accents replaced with black. I didn't get that one because, judging from the pictures, I just felt that the black in place of the gold made the figure look a little too dark. Now, we can't talk about the classified Roadblock without mentioning his weapon, as much as I might like to. When he was first introduced, a big part of Roadblock's appeal was that he was this big, strong guy who carried around a weapon that was generally mounted on something. As the file card states, an M250 caliber Browning weighs 84 pounds just by itself. So Roadblock was always the big guy with the big gun. And when they designed this figure, I don't know what they were thinking. I really don't. To me, Roadblock's weapon is probably the worst accessory in the entire classified line. It's just this big silver blocky looking thing that more closely resembles an electric toothbrush than an actual weapon. And I really don't understand why they did this either. In the very same year that we got classified Roadblock, Hasbro also released the retro packaging line, which features previously released modern construction figures on the classic Hector Greedo painted blister cards. Now, included in that line was a great Roadblock figure that came with 2 weapons. An M249 light machine gun, also known as the Saw rifle, which is what the Saw Viper carried, and a 50 caliber Browning. So I'm like, why, if they can include 2 great real world weapons with that figure in the same year, why didn't they just give the classified one the same guns, just scaled up? They kind of did that across all of them. Mark sent me a picture this week of some of the classified weapons in comparison with actual Nerf weapons, because we hear fans talk about them a lot and calling them Nerf weapons, and the similarities are uncanny between the two. I just don't know why they get it or why they did that. The only one really, and maybe they're getting better with this because like Flint comes with an actual shotgun. Lady J has like a spear gun or a javelin launcher or something that looks very much like her original figure came with. But in the very first line, they just went off the wall with these weapons. And it doesn't make sense to me because the promo Snake Eyes had like an actual Uzi and maybe a Mac 10 or 2 Mac 10s, I'm not sure. But then for that first line right out of the gate, and Roadblock is figure number 1, why are you going to put this idiot looking thing with him, to start your line? I don't get it. Overall, the figure's good. The gun just doesn't do it for me. I've actually tried a couple different guns for replacements. I bought a 50 caliber replica off somebody on Etsy. Unfortunately, it was 3D printed and was very fragile, and I broke it almost right out of the box. I do have a Saw rifle that came from a set that Bobby Valla released in his Action Force accessories, and I've got that with my Roadblock right now, but it just looks kind of too small. I mean, you do need a bigger gun for this character. I don't know why they didn't give him a real one. I don't know. Overall, would I recommend the figure? Yeah, I would. And I would say if you can find the one with the gold accents, the repaint with the black shin guards and the gold taken off, to me looked a lot like, it was just like I said, it was too dark.
Okay, very good. The Roadblock, is a character is interesting, particularly just from that V2 design. Being a rare instance where possibly an update to the outfit seeming to be the more iconic version and the one that maybe possibly an improvement. Certainly,
I would have rather seen him go with the version 1
Really?
for the classified figure.
But yeah, interesting. They went with the version 2 for the classified, and yeah, I think it's often the version of Roadblock that people will think of. I guess it's the version of the character that appeared in G.I. Joe the movie as well, which wouldn't harm people's memories of the characters. But yeah,
I just want to point out the joke in Roadblock's original dossier, which is he found the menus and food prep in the army so egregious that he transferred to infantry, right? So the joke here is that infantry isn't as bad as making all this terrible food in this terrible way. Like, he's so offended by the processes of cooking in the army that he transfers to the infantry.
I kind of took it as he just gave up. He's like, they're not going to teach me what I need to know about cooking. I'm just going to go shoot people.
Do you know offhand who draws the art for the Roadblock classified package? Because I know it's a different artist for each.
Oh no idea.
Package.
I think
which is something that I really like about the
it's
classified.
more of that kind of generic kind of toy. I don't think it's someone so notably a comics artist.
Did you guys get the Roadblock figure, Tim or Mark? I know that Tim didn't.
Oh yeah, I've got it. Yeah, or rather, Thomas has.
Do you have the original one or the repainted one?
The original. I've not gone for any of the repaints.
What do you think about it? You like it?
I like it. Yeah. I think it's I think it's a good one. I was like you. I was tempted to try and track down an alternative weapon for him, but yeah, not to the degree of actually going ahead and doing it. I noticed that there was some quite high end kind of like Browning pieces that are made by other toy companies that are kind of available from, I think, Japan. But yeah, to spend something like £20 to get an extra weapon seemed like it was a bit OTT if it was going to cost the same or more than the actual figure itself.
The same as the actual figure.
Yeah.
And it's a shame. I don't know. One of the big appeals of the original line was that they were realistic. They had realistic weapons. At least in the first 2 or 3 years, the figures all looked really realistic. Look at Snow Job. Look at Torpedo, Doc. They were perfect, and their weapons were real world weapons. And I think that lended a lot of the appeal to the figures and to the line in general. And with this, it's a head scratcher. I don't know why. What this thing is supposed to be. I'm hoping that they'll do another redo. Like I said, I'd love to see a V1 with the 50 cal in this scale. That would be what I would like to see.
Good. Okay. I found the thing for now. So the artist of the Roadblock piece was Mike Thompson.
Thank you for that fact check. Because while you guys have been talking, I've been Googling it and I couldn't find it. And the artist who I thought it wasn't. So
I'll ping the link to it.
What do you think, Mark, about the knife in his chest?
I agree. It's nice that they've tried to replicate what's happening with the original V2 figure, but as you say, it doesn't quite sit right. It kind of seems to be sitting away from his body. Okay.
And it wouldn't have been any trouble to put a sheath on his leg.
Yeah. I guess they obviously what they were going for was to try and replicate the original look, but they didn't quite.
Yeah, well, they could have done that with a real gun.
Very good. Okay, so more toy talk when we catch up with Jay next time. Let's move on to everybody's favorite part of the show. I know that Tim was dying to get onto the next thing in his day, but was desperately hanging on to this because he wouldn't want to miss his favorite part of the show, which is Inuenjoe.
This is how the story goes. Attention. At this moment, you are now listening to
Talking Inuenjoe.
If you are offended by words like
sucking, flesh wound, willy, Pete,
balls. Crystal balls. Hypno shield.
Whatever. Take the tape out now. This is not a pop album. And by the way, suck my
Grandmother's
mother...
brick in a Prada handbag. So, if you remember, if you're of the right frame of mind, a lot of G.I. Joe names can sound a little bit dirty, and so the challenge is, can the guys sit through a list of 10 G.I. Joe names being read out by myself without eliciting some sort of titter, giggle, or guffaw? Let me just check my other screen that we don't have anyone unmuted, and can we just, for clarity, have a check-in from both of the guys? Tim, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay,
I'm ready
right.
to not laugh.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so let's go. I'm just going to start with this one as an intro, just with a thought as to how might you just describe going for a whiz after eating some chili nachos without washing your hands first. Okay, just keep that in mind. Number 1, Firefly, Bullhorn, Scoop, Hot Seat, Hit and Run, Hard Top, Sneak Peek, Crocmaster, said Croc, Dominator, Hardball, nothing. Ugh.
I will say, very good, Mark, because I started with a small smile, and by the third one I had a big smile, and by the fourth one I had a very big smile, and I enjoyed the effort, and I was sort of trying to keep myself from laughing.
Oh, you and me both. I almost lost it at Firefly, but I thought, no, he's not going to win this time. I'm like, I have to do this for Tim. I got to keep a straight face.
I feel like we're disappointing our listeners. You know, this is like when you watch a game show and the person can win $1 million and they walk away with $9,000 and then the episode's over.
Okay, let's gamble. Let's double down on this one, okay? One bonus one, double down, okay?
Wait, what do I get if I don't laugh? What do I get?
You get double extra not laughings, okay?
You get nothing.
Okay, let's settle down. I don't want to cheat here.
Mm-hmm.
But you will.
I'll
I have a straight face and I've taken a sip of water.
Okay. Hopefully a mouthful of water so that
out the nose it goes.
All over the mic. Okay, here we go. Extra bonus, Inuenjoe. Hooded Cobra Commander.
Very good, Mark.
You gambled it and lost.
I'm glad we could give our listeners something to.
Oh dear.
I'm glad our contestant walked away with $1 million at the end of the episode.
Very good. So that is the end of it. So next time on Talking Joe, in addition to any sketchbook specials that we'll be dropping onto the YouTubes, so watch out for those. But next time on Talking Joe podcast proper, we will be talking A Real American Hero 279. So this is Untold Tales Part 4. Cobra has plans to unleash hellacious havoc from the Terrorgome. So it's up to Ace, Slipstream, and the other Joe Air Warriors to unleash justice from the skies and stop the imminent destruction from the drone before it is too late. We've got Larry Hammer, assisted by artist Alex Sanchez.
And we're all really looking forward to this issue because it's been more than a month since the last issue. And I think this is some late COVID-related shipping or like production delays. So Joe fans are really, I'd like to think, antsy for this issue because we got the cover tease like 6 months ago.
It's a crazy amount of time ago. Yeah, it was a long.
That's
time
a great looking cover too.
And I think we might be, if the shipping continues per schedule, we might be in for a treat. We might have our fortnightly ARAH fix for a couple of months. So fingers crossed. We'll see. But I think
IDW's got to make up some cash flow losses with some of these production delays by getting in all the issues that they would have had in the year, which as a reader makes me very happy. Because if this book is weekly, that'd be great.
And then we'll be back here in a fortnight's time for Disavowed, where we'll be covering issues 14 to 16. So we've got the 2-part Homecoming and a 1-parter The Family, and we might be breaking that up into 2 parts. So yeah, wait and see. But if you want to be sure, that is the homework. You can find us in all of the usual places. The talkingjoe.co.uk website has all of those places. The Facebook page, the Twitter, the Instagram, the email address, and also the link to Patreon. So big thanks to all of our backers, Richard, Sam, and Jay, who are getting early access to the episodes, as well as extra exclusive content. Woo! Guys, remind me, where can people find you, should they so wish to?
I'm at Facebook, A Real American Book, and Instagram, A Real American Book. But best of all, arealamericanbook.com.
And G.I.J., if people want to find pictures of Zorana and maybe up-to-the-minute drawings of movie-accurate Scarlet, where should they go?
Break Room Sketches on Facebook.
That's the place. And so, when all is said and done, you can catch us down the road.
See ya, wankers. Wait, did we not decide?
You screwed it all up, Tim.
Because we've been talking Joe.
And we're all out of Joes.
That's when we say, see you, wankers.
There you go.
Just too early. Laters.